We're talking more Senior Bowl standouts. Are these guys sleepers or traps? It's Curtis and Dave on RotoViz Radio.
What's up, RotoViz?
Welcome into the RotoViz Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Curtis Patrick. I'm joined by Dave Caban. We're back for more Senior Bowl week standout analysis. This is a fun week because we get into some guys that, well, first off, the Senior Bowl has just been growing in popularity as an event that players are going to, even if they may have a strong enough profile that they didn't really need it for extra exposure. I think, agents have seen the value of working with some of these NFL team coaching rosters during this week in Mobile. But it's also just fun because of the new names that you get to learn and the profiles that you research that aren't showing up on all the awards lists and aren't showing up on all the, Mel Kiper, Daniel Jeremiah, Todd McShay, top 100 list, et cetera, for the past couple of years. And so these episodes have been fun, and I've sparked some real interest in the rookie class for both Dave and myself. We are going to talk about some pretty interesting players in this episode. Dylan Laube, who is a running back from New Hampshire, also working at the wide receiver position at the Senior Bowl, which is interesting. That's going to check some boxes for our RotoViz sentiments here. And we're also going to talk about Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver out of Florida, and Jamari Thrash, wide receiver out of Louisville. So that's content we're going to cover. This episode is brought to you, as always, by FFPC. It's myffpc.com. That is the home of RotoViz Triflex Dynasty Fantasy Football. That's where you should be playing Dynasty. No league has ever folded. There are many, many different price points to play at, starting at $77 all the way up through $5,000 per league. I mean, if you want to play for some serious jack, you can do it on FFPC. Check it out, myffpc.com. All right, Dave. So if I told you there was a running back at Senior Bowl week that has 2 consecutive seasons with at least 49 receptions to his name, over 1,200 receiving yards and double-digit receiving touchdowns, I'm guessing you'd be pretty interested. Yeah, and I think you'd be even further interested if you heard that he had nearly 2,000 career rushing yards with 24 rushing touchdowns on over 400 carries. And would you even be more interested if he was from the northeast part of the country where you live and wore a cowboy collar in high school football?
I would be very, very interested.
All right. Well, I've got good news for you because Dylan Laube is making a name for himself here at Senior Bowl week, and he's got a really interesting profile. We're going to use the RotoViz Prospect Box Score Scout to check out a little bit more of his profile and try to contextualize it in this class. We'll do some fun guessing games on where he might be drafted. We can solve for his athletic measurements, physical measurements rather, and see what kind of sims we draw up. So Dave, let's run through the profile.
Sure. So this is a running back out of the University of New Hampshire. Only 2 games in his first 2 years at the school, then played 12 games in 2022, followed by 10 in 2023. As Curtis mentioned, a lot of production in those 2 years. Finishes with 417 rushing attempts for 1,959 yards. That gives him 4.7 yards per carry. As Curtis mentioned, 24 touchdowns. A running back dominator through the roof here at 0.86. Had a touchdown adjusted market share of rushes of 0.86. Man, you then add to that 122 receptions for 1,251 receiving yards, 10 receiving touchdowns. That brings him to a receiving yards market share of 19%, touches adjusted market share of 0.47, and a total yards adjusted market share of 35. Now, obviously, people would point out here that, when you go to a school, smaller school like UNH, and you're a player that's an NFL prospect, you're probably going to be doing things like this. And of course, we do have to factor some of that into how we view a player like this. But it is really fun to see a guy put up numbers like this, get the recognition, and then make his way into, the Senior Bowl and have a chance to maybe make the league and, get a nice payday. You're muted.
That's no good. So, talking about the competition level for UNH. So one thing that's fun to do with these real small schools is, what do the players do when they do face a school from, a legitimate, larger conference? And would you be surprised if I told you his most interesting career game came in one of those situations? It was in September of this year, 2023. UNH lost just by 3 points on the road at Central Michigan. Now, Central Michigan's not exactly a powerhouse, but they're playing up above their level. UNH is in that case. Laube had 12 receptions for 295 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns in this game. Wow. He also added 30 yards on the ground and a touchdown on 7 carries. So, I mean, when he had a chance to play, up, he didn't disappoint. I mean, there may not be a receiver in this class that had a game with 295 receiving yards. I haven't looked at every single receiver's game log. I'm going to guess at the Senior Bowl, at least, there's not a receiver with 295 yards to his name. So that is really, really interesting. But these types of players, when you can do both things, when you don't have to come off the field, you can be a passing attack weapon like this. He's going to appeal to somebody, man. This is the type of player that, with a versatile skill set, a coaching staff could fall in love with. And he's on my radar. He was not on my radar coming to Senior Bowl week. This is why the Senior Bowl is such a cool event. I want to look at the Sims functionality within this. Hold
on. I gotta add one thing in here. You look at his kick return yards in some of these games, and it's absurd too, like 100, 119. Of course, some of this came against Fordham and Richmond. Interestingly, Curtis, a lot of these small schools around here I'm familiar with, they are very small. It's almost like in the games against these real small ones like Stonehill and stuff, he didn't really even get that much playing time because he has his lowest numbers against them. But anyways, that kick return stuff off the charts for him. I will get to the Sims now.
You're going to really make me fall in love. You start talking about special teams production on top of what he did as an offensive player. I mean, this guy's flying up my personal favorites list now.
Oh, for sure. All right. So what are we doing here? So wait, you may have told me that. Sorry, I got lost in the sea of kick returns.
You're fine, man. So Laube checked in at 210 pounds.
Yep.
And he was he was definitely a day 3 guy, but I think anytime you stand out at the Senior Bowl, we can push you up maybe to the earlier portions of day 3. Let's go 120 overall. Let's just see what we get there.
All right, so we're going to look from 2013 to 2023 as we did in the episode we did yesterday. We do get some names we talked about prior.
Oh, boy. Run down this list, man. This is crazy.
Yep. So you got Evan Hull out of Northwestern, Patrick Laird, Rachaad White. Oh, my gosh. Jahmyr Gibbs.
Jahmyr Gibbs. We get a Jahmyr Gibbs sim for Dylan frickin' Laube.
Yep. Elijah Dotson, Marion Grice. Oh, I haven't heard that name in a long time. Yeah. Taquan Rizell, Josh Ferguson, Charles Sims, and Deuce Vaughn. Yeah, Charles.
This is a cool list, man. This is a really cool list. I mean, even if you only just got Rachaad White or Jahmyr Gibbs, it would already be, okay, let's just put a pin in this guy and make sure that he stays on our radar all offseason.
Yep.
But Charles Sims, that's a very, very talented player. And Deuce Vaughn, excelled despite his, diminutive stature. I'm looking at the smaller school guys here. Maybe let's even flip over another page and let's see if we get any like really small school guys filtering in here that had some success.
Not really, which is kind of interesting.
Jeremy McNichols out of Boise State.
Oh, Boise State's
Kenneth Gainwell. Kenneth Gainwell, Memphis. Yeah.
I feel like these are much bigger programs.
Well, they are, but I mean,
We're just searching for what we can
they're not
find.
Alabama. They're not Alabama. So
Right.
that's what we're really looking for here.
Ito
So,
Smith, Southern Mississippi. Oh, I
Yeah.
haven't heard Ito Smith in a while. That's fun to say.
I'm intrigued, man.
Hey,
Buck
look.
Allen.
Oh my God, Alvin Kamara, Brees Hall, Javorius Allen. We got some guys in here, man.
Yeah.
Of course, we're down the list here.
Yeah, I think the top sims, those are the ones that are going to stick. We'll have to see. I mean, hopefully this guy has an impressive 40. That'll really go a long way. But I mean, the bottom line is there's just not very many backs in any draft year that can boast of 100+ receptions, regardless of the size of their school. That can boast functionality,
the market share numbers
of the game. And then, to your point, the team rode him and he held up. So this is great. This is great. I mean, this was worth the episode. This is worth the listen. Dylan Laube. So the title of the episode, Dave, is Sleeper or Trap. I'm going to say Sleeper. Okay. What do you say?
Well, the first thing is, I wish that in this model here, we could have incorporated, the wearing of a cowboy collar in high school, because I think that clearly should have factored in. But
he gets a boost for the comps to Jay Novacek and Mike Allstott. I think that's not a
yes. So here's the problem. I am going to say, so it's sleeper or trash. I am going to go trash here.
Trap, not
trap.
trash.
Not trash.
Trash.
Okay. All right. All right. I unfortunately think I have to call a trap on this, just because I look through that list of the teams that this guy is playing, and I know that UNH does play some legit teams sometimes. And I think in the division that they are in, they are normally a pretty good program. But there are a lot of games against tier of schools that are a step or two down from UNH. So you're getting to like small kind of like local colleges.
Here's what I will read to you from Lance Zierlein before you lock in your take.
Okay. Yep.
I've given this to you earlier because this is the NFL draft scout eyes on player at the Senior Bowl take. Okay.
Yep.
Dylan Laube, this New Hampshire star, is gaining more fans this week. Laube carries a broad, muscular build. He showed off his speed turning the corner during a wide flowing run on Tuesday and outran Washington State cornerback Charles Smith-Wade on a post corner as a wideout during one-on-one drills on Wednesday. He's worked out his craft as a slot receiver as well. It showed last season with 68 catches for 700 yards and 7 receiving touchdowns. There's often concern about whether small school players can handle the jump in competition and mobile, but Senior Bowl executive director Jim Nagy nailed it with the invitation for Laube. He fits right in from a talent and confidence standpoint.
Okay. All right. Well,
not that that's one man's take, right? That doesn't mean you have to change your mind, but that's Lance Zierlein.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's certainly valid. I think that a player like this, you probably need to find them in the right situation.
Yeah.
A team that's going to find the correct way to use him. So, we'll split the difference here. I think I am going to stick on trap for the time being. All said, albeit though with a lot of enthusiasm here, that I hope that by the end of this cycle, I get to be more on board than I am. And I'll be hoping that he lands in a great spot, especially for a kid coming out of UNH.
Yeah. If we get the combine invite, then things start heating up for real. Yep. So, okay, well, let's put a pin in Laube. We'll come back. That'll be fun to see who is right. One of us is probably going to fail miserably on this one with this type of player. Okay, Let's go to Jamari Thrash, wide receiver out of Louisville here. Dave,
probably the best name in the class, as you mentioned.
Yeah, this is just an absolutely awesome name. Always love the Louisville unis. For those of you that are checking this out on YouTube, you can check out the thumbnail for the episode and the all blacked out kit. He looks like a pretty imposing and intimidating force. Now, he started his career at Georgia State and then transfer portal, played a 5th season at Louisville after having, quite a bit of success in his final 2 years, at least at Georgia State. So let's run his profile. This is not a player that was very much on my radar before this week, Dave.
Sure. So just to put things in perspective here, at Georgia State, just 1 game as a freshman, 6 as a sophomore. 2021 had 11, 2022, 12 games, 2023, 12 games. So, I'm trying to think here, Curtis, if I don't want to go too far in depth. I'm going to go career stuff here. Okay.
Yeah, let's just do that.
Finishes with 165 receptions. Just as a point of reference, at Louisville put up 63. A career receiving yards per reception of 15.53 at Louisville was at 13.62. Okay. Had 2,563 yards across 42 games, 17 receiving touchdowns in his career. 7 of them came in 2022, 6 in 2023. Gives him a receiving yards market share on his career of 0.28, which is actually the yards market share he put up when he was at Louisville. Receiving yards or receptions, YPTA was at 2.18 on his career, and a receiving dominator of 0.26 across the year. However, though, 0.42 in 2022, and then at Louisville last year at 0.28. So, that's a good dominator rating. Definitely respectable. Did actually add in a little bit of production too as a rusher with a rushing touchdown last season. So that's kind of the quick and dirty here on Jamari Thrash.
Okay. So, I mean, good enough that he's not just like completely filtered out as needing to be like a film or athletic outlier. Yeah. There's enough there statistically to have a little interest, even if he is going to be, a much older player. So let's go over to the Sims and see what happens. Let's give Thrash weighed in at 185 this week.
Okay.
And he is also considered a day 4 guy. Let's go 105 overall.
Okay. All right. We punch that in and we'll see what we get here. Oh man, a fun name behind him in Rachaad Green Sr., who, if people remember, played at Florida State with Jameis Winston, and Winston just peppered him with targets. Followed by Justin Hardy, Jamison Crowder, Kyle Phillips, Devin Street, Romeo Doubs, Tony Lippett, Ryan Switzer, Trent Taylor, and Jalen Naylor.
Not bad for a list of guys that, I mean, none of these guys were early draft position. I don't actually see anyone drafted before day 3 on this list. And you find some guys that had a little bit of success. Obviously, Crowder, a really nice career, and Doubs looks like, pretty solid situation here for Romeo Doubs. So even just getting those 2 names when you're dealing in this day 3 territory, that's pretty encouraging. And of course, we still don't even have a 40 to solve for Thrash here. But I think he's going to be average speed or better.
Right. So this looks like a list of guys that I think with a solid 40, maybe we could get him improved a little bit, because a lot of the comps, for those of you listening that can't see what we're looking at here, we're between a 4.5 into the 4.6 territory. Maybe he gets a little bit more interesting if he pushes up into that 4.4 to 4.5 type of range. As a lot of the names, you look at here, definitely nice to see a couple of hits. But these are the guys that, we always felt were kind of on the precipice. If they could get in the right situation, maybe they can make something happen. So we'll see where Thrash can go, but love the name, and hopefully, he blazes.
Yeah. And so, let's see what happens. I mean, maybe he blows up in the game and, he gets steamed up real bit. I mean, looking at this list, I tend to think I'm going to go Senior Bowl trap over sleeper.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it 2 out of 10 hits with Crowder and Doubs here.
Yes. Okay.
Right? Okay. So,
I don't really love it that much. I'm trying to keep the enthusiasm high though, because of the name. The recurring thing though that people should know now, right? Yeah. Like we haven't touched upon this in a while. Curtis is, an optimistic guy. He's got phrases about, staying positive, what have you. I tend to be a little bit more on what some might call the pessimistic side. I call it the realistic side. So, we like to find a balance in between.
And we're agreeing on this one though. We're agreeing on this one. We can say there's a couple nice things in his profile, but I mean, this Sims list combined with his lack of prospect pedigree coming out of school, the fact that he took until 4 years at Georgia State to really break out and transfer, and that he's going to be one of the older wide receivers in the class.
Yeah.
I mean, there's quite a few flags there. So
yeah, we hadn't even touched upon that. That is, that's a problem.
The name maybe erases 2 flags, but it can't erase 5. So
yeah. All right.
Let's move on to another wide receiver, a little bit of a bigger name. I think it's going to be our first prospect that we talk about tonight that could be a day 2 type player. It's Ricky Pearsall out of Florida, wide receiver out of Florida. Pearsall checked in at 193 pounds and 6 foot on the nose this week. Let's see what the scouts on site here have had to say about Pearsall. When it comes to my tape study of this year's class, says in your line, it's hard to find a wide receiver that's more consistent than Pearsall. He's performing at the same level this week, no matter who's guarding him, showing off route running ability and consistent hands during one-on-one drills. There are some debates in draft rooms I expect this spring about how to value Pearsall versus Georgia's Laube McConkey, who is also starring here in Mobile, among slot receivers in the class. Okay, so this is Pearsall projecting as a slot receiver. Both uncover at a high rate. Pearsall has the advantage in terms of size, but McConkey is a faster player. Okay, so we were pretty excited about Laube McConkey as a name in yesterday's episode. Let's see how Pearsall's profile compares. Another SEC guy.
Sure. So this is a guy that spent 3 years in the more or less now defunct Pac-12, then transfers over to Florida in 2022 to get 2 years in there. Played in 7 games as a freshman, just recorded 7 receptions, 4 games in 2020, 6 receptions. Then we see him get a full complement of games in his 3rd year. In that season, went for 48 receptions, 580 yards, 4 receiving touchdowns, receiving dominator of 0.28. So solid season there. Then he makes his way over to Florida in 13 games, 33 receptions, 661 receiving yards. That's actually 20 yards per reception, puts up 5 receiving touchdowns. So that's a market share of receptions of 17%. Yards market share of 23, touchdowns market share of 28, leaving him with a receiving dominator of 0.25. Comes back for the final year at Florida. In 12 games, gets up to 64 receptions, raising his market share of receptions up to 0.23. Goes for 15.16 yards per reception, scores 4 touchdowns, gives him a touchdown market share of 0.2, receiving dominator of 0.26. So I look at that profile, Curtis. Oh, and skipping ahead of myself here, we got to get down to the fact,
my friend. Got to cover the rushing.
Yep, 21 rushing attempts for 253 rushing yards, but importantly, 5 rushing touchdowns. So we do like to see that, giving him a total touchdown adjusted market share of 0.16 and yards market share of 0.21 in that last year at Florida. So this is a pretty interesting profile. We'd like to have seen a little bit more production, I think, earlier on. Like we talked about with other players, the age factor might hurt him a little bit here. But, as you mentioned, in that competition, in that slot receiver type of role, so maybe we can overlook some of the receiving touchdown numbers being, not a season where he got to 8 or 9, but still, decent dominator. Overall, a profile that I think is going to pull in maybe 3 or 4 interesting comps.
So he's older, man. He's already 23 and he'll turn 24 in September. So that's another thing to keep in mind here.
Yep.
So, but going back, he was a pretty highly amongst the guys that we're talking about. He was like the biggest time guy coming out of high school. He was a pretty big get, 23rd overall prospect in his state coming out of high school, and was a top 150 wide receiver prospect in that class. So
what state was that?
I just clicked.
Do we know that?
Just high school, Arizona.
Okay.
Arizona. So, but he was a top 150 wide receiver in the country as a senior in high school. So, I mean, it's respectable. He was on the radar. This is different than Thrash, right? He didn't go to a small school. I mean, going to Arizona State and then transferring up to Florida is more impressive than Thrash's journey from Georgia State to Louisville for sure. So with Pearsall, I mean, this is a chain moving profile, man. I mean, he's moving the chains in multiple ways, and we love the slot receivers for fantasy purposes. Let's go to the Sims and see what we can find there. From the several sites that I was looking at from a draft projection perspective and also NFL mock draft database, I'm going to go late third round on Pearsall. Let's go 90 overall.
Okay.
And his weight, Dave, was 193.
All right. So we've dropped those pieces in. I'm excited to see what we come up with here after we finish the search in the tool here.
Yeah. Ricky Pearsall, a modern receiver for the modern game. What we got here?
Couple of interesting ones here.
Yeah, we got some names.
We start off with Josh Huff, who you might remember out of Oregon back in 2010 to 2013, followed by, Malcolm Mitchell out of Georgia, Ryan Switzer, Rasheed Rice, Michael Wilson, Khalil Shakir, Taywan Taylor, Devin Duvernay, Des Fitzpatrick, and Jordan Payton.
So we get a hit with Rice here for sure. And then we get some TBD situation going on with Michael Wilson and Shakir. I do think one of those guys ends up panning out. Let's go. Let's just humor me and exclude non-Power 5 because he was at Power 5 for his whole career.
For sure.
So we're going to get rid of like Taywan and a couple. Okay. Let's see what else we bring in. Is it quality at all?
When we do that, we bring in Rachaad Green, Devin Street, and Deshaun Hamilton.
So I mean,
same type of bag.
It doesn't really improve the profile much, and I mean, you're not going to get a lot of hits out of this range. I mean, by the time you get to this day 2, day 3 borderline, you're gonna miss. So let's say Pearsall steams up a little bit, and let's push him to the earlier phases of the third round and just see what happens. Let's say it's like pick 70. How does that change?
So pick 70. If we exclude non-Power 5, unfortunately, that's actually hurting his case because it's moving Rasheed Rice. But when we make that change, we leave off the Power 5 players. We don't get too much of a change here. So you got Josh Huff, Malcolm Mitchell, Michael Wilson, Sterling Shepard, Devin Duvernay, Ryan Switzer, Des Fitzpatrick, Cedric Tillman, Deshaun Hamilton, Jordan Payton. So
okay, now let's pull the Power 5 or the non-Power 5 back in. Final exercise.
Okay. So we have done that, and now you get, under this case, with the increase in draft pick, the list goes Huff, Rice, Malcolm Mitchell, Taywan Taylor, Michael Wilson, Sterling Shepard, Devin Duvernay, Ryan Switzer, Des Fitzpatrick, Cedric Tillman.
Okay. So, I mean, it's an interesting list with a lot of TBD still on it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I've got to call him a sleeper or a trap here. I mean, he's pretty darn old, but he's a slot receiver, and we've seen some of the older slot guys still get it done. Man, I'm really torn. Why don't you go first after looking at this profile? What do you think?
It's a trap.
It's a trap.
I think it's a trap. I think the production came a little bit later than I would like to have seen. I do think that it's a decent profile overall. But when I look at this, the odds of this player materializing into the type of player that's going to be impactful enough for us to be caring largely about in fantasy, I think is pretty low. Unless we see that, I'd have to run it through a model, but I think unless we see him creep up to somewhere around like 50, 55, this is likely a trap.
Okay. I'm seeing that his dad is a firefighter in Arizona and played at Northern Arizona. So he's got some bloodlines from a football perspective. So
did Rashad Perriman.
Okay, I'm looking for special teams here, seeing if I can find any other information. Not a lot there. He has 15 career punt returns with a 10.2 per return average.
So hold on. I think
he's completed 3 out of 3 career passes for 111 yards and a touchdown. And I don't know, man. I think when you get into this area, it is just so dicey, because when receivers fall into this area, it's for a reason. I mean, if they're ironclad locks, at this position, they're not lasting this late. So because I have to make a choice here, I'm also going to say trap. But it would not surprise me if he or McConkey, one of the two, ends up having some utility. So while I'm calling him a trap, it's only because if he would to get steamed up, I don't think that the profile supports it after hearing you walk through that. However, if we're talking about the 3rd round of our rookie draft or, something like that, you're not a trap at that point. That's just not a player we want to overdraft.
Right. I was going to say one thing that we probably should have done was define, like, in the context of the type of players we're looking at, what a sleeper is, or like what a trap is, or more so what a trap is in this context. I'm kind of viewing it as a player that you could get excited about, but even like with where they're going to go, I don't think the profile lends itself to being excited unless I don't know exactly where I'm going with this. I don't know.
It's fine. I think the listeners understand the delivery at this point. So what we will do is, if we do another sleeper or trap episode, is we will offer some criteria for that.
I need some parameters.
Yeah. So the spreadsheet guy needs some parameters. Not surprising and totally fair. So I will do a better job of defining if we do the exercise. But hopefully everyone enjoyed hearing about Dylan Laube, Jamari Thrash, and Ricky Pearsall. Let us know in the YouTube comments what you think about these players. Do you have a strong take? Are there any other Senior Bowl players that you would like to hear us review when we are back on air Thursday night? We will consider any suggestions you have. You can also hit us on X with those suggestions as well. Dave, I think we are done. Hit the outro, sir.
First, I'm just going to say I am really looking forward to the episode where we finally get to talk about Keon Coleman. It's going to come at some point, and I'm looking forward to it.